Alright, this might not be a very long one, but I'm going to see if I can make it to the red rock over there, which is, I believe, just some red Navajo sandstone. First of all, I got to get through this small sea of sagebrush, Artemisia tridentata. Which variety? Again, I can't tell you. I might guess Wirelettuce on this one, though. I mean, that would certainly make the most sense. We got a little bit of Purshia tridentata, Antelope Bitterbrush. You see them growing together fairly often, but that's a little interesting. And of course, this whole place is being encroached upon by Pinyon Juniper. Now, I think we're starting to get into the transition zone between Pinus edulis and Pinus monophylla, and I think there's a bit of hybridization, but more to the west, we'd start to find exclusively Pinus monophylla. Just check the needles on these ones. Yeah, these are still two needle ones, I believe. I'm not sure whatever features you can use to tell the two apart. I think Pinus monophylla tends to have some slightly more bluish, grayish needles, while Pinus edulis tends to have the dark green ones. And of course, that's just Juniperus osteosperma. I'll talk about in a second, but here we got sand sagebrush growing right next to the big sagebrush. This is Artemisia filifolia, which, as the name implies, you typically see it growing on deep sand, which makes it kind of interesting that we never saw any of it. Well, I guess not deep sand, but just very sandy swales. Still, I would have imagined we'd see some at the coral pink sand dunes, but for whatever reason we didn't. Oh well. There's lots of annoying grasses on the ground that I imagine are not native. But this is, of course, Juniperus osteosperma. And we still love this guy, even if some people think he's invasive. I certainly do. No clue what that is, but it looks boraginaceous. But I got some time I gotta make, so I'm gonna try and hurry on to the good stuff over there. This area has been pretty heavily slashed, which we don't know what that means. That's when the BLM comes in, or at least sends a crew in to cut down a bunch of pinyon and juniper and then masticate or just cut them to pieces, leaving this stuff behind to try and give other plants a chance to grow. Although it can work out well sometimes. Looks pretty dreadful for the first few years afterwards, at least. It's a bit of a controversial thing because it is pretty destructive and it's a great opportunity for more weeds to encroach, but Pinyon and Juniper has been expanding as a community for quite a while now. I gotta figure out what this shrub is. Seeing it all over the place, so it's clearly doing a pretty good job here. The BLM will also usually reseed an area with plants that are found in the region beforehand, at least if they're doing it right or trying to do a good job. I'm not sure how well the first slash jobs when they started doing this turned out, but they also sometimes drag a big chain on the ground to do it. Oh, here's another thing, I'm not sure what it is, I'll figure out later, but it does look like it's related to Stephanomeria or Lygodesmia, if not one of those species. Clearly something in the Sicariidae subfamily of the aster family. So if I was to pluck a branch off of it or pluck some of the petals, it would bleed some milky sap. It's just what they do. But dang, this is, as I said before, going to be a learning experience for me doing some stuff here. It's been a while since I've been here, and I didn't quite have some good fundamentals for botany at the time. This is more of a Euphrosyne acerosa, perhaps. Not totally sure, but it does look like it a bit. Right, we're just in a much more regular sandy site now. Way less weeds, evidence of slash, of course. Lots of this Muhlenbergia pungens, which I talked about in the coral pink sand dunes. Seems like they're just starting to put out their seeds now. I like the way they spread out clonally, the way I think Buddleia gracilis does. You can see that's probably where the plant got its start, right in the center. It's old roots and dead stems. It just slowly spreads out from there, helping to bind the sand together. We got a nice, if I had more water, I'd pour some water on this moss so I can show you how quickly it'd turn green, but I have two shorts showing that happens in literal seconds. So my next task has got to be to figure out what some of these other grasses are. I saw this really interesting one for a second, but I can't find it anymore. I'm sure I'll come across it again. Also, what this eriogonum is. I really am so out of my depth here. I know this is an eriogonum, as a matter of fact. Saw a few others on the way in. And of course, getting lots of the Opuntia aria, perhaps my favorite species of prickly pear. Most just because it's such a narrow endemic, like I said, to the Dixie Divide, an area between St. George and Kanab approximately, and a little bit into Arizona, of relatively high elevations. Things average about probably about 6,000 feet in elevation in this general area. And these guys just thrive here. It was once thought to be a variety of polyacanth, but it's certainly part of that whole complex. Looks a bit like Opuntia basilaris, but it has different shaped petals. It occasionally has spines, unlike basilaris. Well, maybe basilaris sometimes has spines. I don't know for sure. I've never seen it, but it could be the case. But its flowers are also pretty different from basilaris. So it's not thought that there's even that much hybridization between the two. Been starting to see a lot of Sphaerocia parvifolia, which is a tough plant but often grows very abundantly in places heavily encroached upon by weeds. But if you don't have a ton of here, this Brassicaceae thing might be invasive. I don't know for sure, and I don't know what it is either. It's too dead to ever determine. But I do appreciate the Sphaeroceas for how hardy they are in the changing landscape with all the invasives we got. I can even see it growing pretty dense in areas overrun with cheatgrass, which is kind of cool. Getting kind of close, but I have a hard cutoff head back time because there's another place I want to check out before I check out for today. That this wash was flowing just yesterday with all the storms, which we might get some more of. Probably not before I reach my car heading back, but in the near future at least. Gotta figure out what. Okay, well, this has just got to be some, I don't know if they're a Pallida, but I also have to deep dive amongst everything else more into the Onotheras, because there's a lot of interesting species amongst them, and this has got to be some species of Ambrosia, which I can't identify right now. It took me a while to figure out what the local one to Salt Lake City was that we always see. So I'm pretty sure this is something, I see it pretty widely in the Colorado Plateau. It's gotta be something, that's all I'm saying. Pretty sure most of the sagebrush here is Artemisia tridentata, with the exception of the filifolia growing amongst us. Basin big sagebrush, just because of how tall it is. They're also known for having long leaves and being irregularly topped. Like they don't have a flat top. They kind of just spread out any which way into the sky with different branches reaching different heights. We're almost to the red rock, which I'm pretty excited about. And here is where the Navajo sandstone abruptly starts. This is not Navajo sandstone. I'm going to be pretty embarrassed, but 8 times out of 10 you see rock that looks like this on the Colorado Plateau. It's Navajo sandstone, possibly entrata, depending on where you are, which is a layer that sits above a Navajo. It's like how barren everything is. So that's Purshia. Cercocarpus latifolius variety intricatus. They are related to each other, Purshias and Cercocarpus, but I'm pretty sure that's what this is at least. That thrives on the Colorado Plateau. I'm just happy to have made it now. It's so beautiful here. Hope I don't have any cheatgrass seeds in my socks, because I'm now in a nice upland sandy Pinyon juniper forest. Definitely heavy on the juniper, as so often is with these sandy sites. Of course, our good friend Yucca angustissima. Whoa, lots of Opuntia aria. Love that guy. Okay, there might be something cool if I can make it with my set time limit. Well, this definitely seems like a site that has much less human activity. I mean, it's probably pretty rare that people are walking up here. And as a result, there's very few invasive weeds. My shoes do seem to be free of cheatgrass seeds right now, but I gotta make more sure about in the future, as we all should if we're hiking off trail. Not sure if it's some type of burrowing bee or ant that is making these mounds, but I'm seeing them all over the place. As mentioned before, there's a ton of bee diversity in the Colorado Plateau, as well as the whole broader desert region of the United States. Really, deserts all over the world tend to have very high bee diversity. You know, Israel has a ton of bee diversity, for instance. Got some Quercus gambellii now. Man, this is so much better from the place I started at. Wow. Those clouds look less than pleased that I'm out here. But I'm so close to a place that I know it's going to be awesome. I'm almost at my turnaround time. Maybe I'll extend it a little bit. If I can make it to the site, I know it's cool. I gotta ignore this stuff. Ignore the Arctostaphylos pungens. Ignore the Quercus turbinella, I believe. Yeah, Quercus turbinella though is really cool. It's a live oak, so it doesn't lose its leaves in the winter. Oh my gosh, I'm already too distracted. Just at the top of this hill though, I swear. Man, it's so hot right now. Maybe it would be nice if I got rained on. I'm starting to feel that way. Well, don't go over the chip bag, I'll take that away. Whew. Oh man, this is so worth it though, I promise. Okay, gotta go around this way. I see. Huh. Okay. Some nice views. That being said, I think if I were to enter this place or arrive at this ridge from more over there, I'd be on that ridge of the sunlight instead of this one. And you get a much better view into a deeper canyon. This is just a short branch off of a larger one behind that sunlit ridge. There's lots of chip bag. As you can sort of see there, that's sort of the, I think, top of a drainage that goes down that way. On the other side, I know it goes for some number of miles. It's a big canyon, but it's pretty nice. Gotta try and figure out what those mountains are way in the distance. Just the very top, there's like 2 or 3. And I'm glad I went all the way out here. And that Quercus turbinella, or whatever its scientific name is, I know it's called turbinella live oak, that's a cool one. You see a lot in Zion National Park. I'm surprised I haven't seen any around Kanab yet. Just barely down there is the Arizona border, by the way, somewhere. I think that light color road is in Arizona, because the road, I drove down to Arizona for a second and the road changed the color to that white one. Whatever. Thanks for watching and see you next time. You can tell water likes the course down here because there's no accumulation of sediment or anything except in a few areas where it would just go right over any impact. It's pretty damp actually. But washes are always a great place to go off trail for leave no trace purposes because, you know, you don't have a lot of vegetation, especially when it's hard rock like this. I mean, oh, hello. Yucca baccata. Another one of my favorite yuccas you can find in the region. It's got the thick blue leaves. This one's just starting to come up. Gotta make an observation for that. One more thing to finish up this video, I guess. This tinaja, like an ephemeral pool that develops on the hard rock. There's a lot of sediment in the bottom as well. But these things can be a real lifeline for certain animals in the desert. Anywhere where water accumulates, you're going to find a concentration of animals. Here it just seems to be a bunch of non-native wasps, but some algae in here as well. So maybe something like Oregonium or spirulina, whatever, I don't know. One of those kinds of things is filamentous green algae, but the coolest thing I saw here is this stuff. It's like a frog laid its eggs in several spots in the water. Maybe some are amphibian, probably a toad or frog. It's a diving beetle trying to get at them. It's when you find these tiny ecosystems in the middle of such a harsh landscape. Thanks for watching, see you next time.